I'm going to call the second meeting of the Ramsey County Home Rule Charter Committee to order. Has everyone had a chance to look over the minutes that Mandy was able to hand out to us?
I'll make a motion to approve.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion to approve the minutes carries. Has everyone looked over the agenda that was prepared for the meeting today?
You need a 3-hole punch.
Is there any discussion on the agenda?
I'll move that we accept it as is.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. None, motion carried. So we'll move on to discussion of the handouts. Hello, Mr. Wall.
Sorry, Mike.
All right. We've just approved the minutes and the agenda. So, has everyone had a chance to look through the booklets that Candy handed out?
Thank you, Candy, for doing all of that.
Nathan too.
Yes. Thank you to Nathan and Candy.
I have to be honest, I got through about 3/4
Well,
of it.
Very thorough.
Anthony, we approved the agenda and the minutes, and we are now discussing what we thought about the booklet that Candy and Nathan put together for us.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any initial thoughts or reactions to the materials found within the booklet they'd like to share with the committee?
That's an intriguing reading.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any more information on what the toolbox legislation that they were talking about earlier?
Yes,
Okay.
and I think Adam probably has the best understanding of it. So I'm most willing to volunteer Adam to tell you about it.
In all honesty, in talking with Elizabeth when she was on it about it, she wasn't exactly clear on it, the parameters of what the toolbox legislation was versus the home rule. And in all honesty, I've never found a really definitive answer myself.
From what I've read, Adam, was that the toolbox is what the commission would go to, use the state laws and rules and refer to their toolbox versus the home rule committee. And so the home rule committee wasn't really, they were doing things, but anytime there became a decision from the county commission, it would go right to the toolbox and it wouldn't go to what they were doing. And it seemed like from the read of the resignation letters and whatever it was, they were saying that they weren't really getting a whole lot out of it, you know, as far as where it was going. And so understanding why they dissolved was because commissioners would probably want to go with the state toolbox to avoid any controversy or this or that. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
And I think to speak a little bit more plainly on what the toolbox is, the toolbox was an amendment to Century Code that statewide relaxed some of the operating methods and standardized practices and gave county to county a little bit more freedom to maneuver. And I think that was passed after the first home rule charter commission, which is why you saw no mention of it in the 1990s discussion on home rule. I would say that in my view, in a general sense, the toolbox legislation would represent a half step towards what a home rule charter would allow for, which is to say that it's a little bit looser than Century Code was in the 90s and before, even prior to that. but does not allow as much freedom to design a system of governance that a home rule charter would allow for.
That's it.
I think that's a good way to describe it. Yeah, in 1993, they adopted the tool chest legislation. It's codified in 1110.2 and 11-10.3. Oh, there we go. Chapter 11-10.2 allows a county, without requiring the county to be a home rule county, to combine an elective county office with one or more functionally related elective or appointed county offices, separate an elective county office into two or more elective or appointed offices, or redesignate an elective county office as an appointed office or an appointed office as an elective office. That's complicated enough. 11-10.02-01 provides that the option to combine, separate, or designate county offices is in addition to or in lieu of other county structural options authorized under Title 11. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff here too. Most of it appears is under allowing the ability to do something with county offices.
Yeah, my understanding is that it stops short of any discussion about revenues.
Interesting. Yeah, it gives the option, for instance, if you're two smaller counties and you wanted to share an auditor, you could have a joint powers agreement between two counties, and then both counties' electorates could then vote to share an auditor then. And you could elect one auditor, or you could do it as an appointed thing between the two commissions, it appears.
Which is another thing that a home rule charter allows for, if you look in century code, is actually for the full combining of two counties.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, it appears as though that's what most of it has to do with, though. Yeah, it falls short of a lot of other stuff that home rule can accomplish.
And so I think that, the rationale, at least in my perspective of hoping that we could get a discussion about home rule together and to look at a charter again, is to ensure that going forward, Ramsey County has a diverse set of tools to deal with any challenges that might arise, or to help capitalize on the fact that we have this great opportunity as a hub community and county for the region. So. One thing that I would note as an interesting distinction in tone, something that I had mentioned to Candy, was it certainly seemed like in reading through the minutes and what was discussed and what was hoped for, that there was a lot more optimism in the 1990s Home Rule Committee than there was in the 2005 Home Rule Committee. That it seems, at least in reading through the minutes of both, that there seemed to be a fair bit of uncertainty as to what the Home Rule Committee was looking to do and accomplish in 2005.
Right, and Judy Bott, excuse me, if I can speak. Judy Bott's resignation letter was saying there was no ground to it, they weren't getting anywhere, and so they dissolved. And so, hopefully we can change that and do what you guys want us to do or whatever. It just seemed like, from reading it, it was a good plan, but it really wasn't, nothing was really enacted on it.
Well, it sounded like they were super confused as to who and what they even were.
Right. Are we a commission or are we a committee? That was
That's why you're late in the game here.
right. At their, I think 5th or 6th meeting,
Yeah.
they had a discussion on that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was interesting from the minutes of the November 16th, 2004 meeting, they had the Richland County Auditor come and speak, and of course Richland County has adopted, I think, the oldest home rule charter in Ramsey County, and adopted in 86, 84.
Yeah, it was probably right after they changed the legislation in 85, or 83, whatever it was.
And I thought that the point that the county auditor made, it was interesting and certainly something to consider, that the auditor felt at that time that the flexibility allowed by a home rule charter allowed the different departments and offices within the county to operate more efficiently. Now, I don't know the specifics of why that would be the case, but I think that illustrates, at least to me, the importance of reaching out to some of these other counties that have home rule and to get their sense for what sorts of efficiencies might be found and what sorts of ways we could get the different departments to be more effective if there is such a way to do that. I think as a more broad note, and something that I feel is worth mentioning because it came up in the 2005, a little bit later on, the county commission said something to the effect of the county's operating fine, right? Somewhere a little bit later on in the
If it
minutes.
isn't broke, don't fix it.
Right, and I think that that's a really reactive way of thinking. And I think that it behooves us as a community to not accept the performance of the past, right? That we should always be striving, in a general sense, to be better, to be more efficient, to conduct the government in a way that is the most helpful to the people. And so I think that that's neither here nor there in regards to what we are doing here. I just hope that that is not the end result of this committee. Is that at some point the commission says, well, things are working just fine right now, so let's not touch it. Because I think that there are good things that we can do, we just have to try.
In 2004, it was October in the minutes as well, there was an invitation also to Walsh, Richland, Cass County. On that same note, they reached out to them, the suggestion to invite other counties such as Walsh, Richland, or Cass to the meetings to get their input on the home rule charter. This meeting will be held on November 16, 2004 in the historical room. I think that's a good point, so getting, the counties that are already using the home rule, maybe together, find out what their strong points are, what it is. And
Yeah.
it's working.
Absolutely. And seeing as we have in attendance here, most of the department heads that are in this building, I think that it might be illustrative. I mean, obviously, each year when we get together for the the North Dakota Association of Counties meeting, you have the chance to talk to your counterparts that do operate out of home rule counties. But I think it might be illustrative both for you and for us to try to bring some of those people over, or even if we could get them on a conference call or a Skype call, and just talk through some of the ways in which they feel that their performance is different. Not necessarily better, but just different than the way that we do business here.
And some of them are really different. Like Walsh County now, they've appointed a county auditor. Their treasurer's still elected. Wapaton they've appointed. Grand Forks they've appointed.
Isn't Richland the auditor appoints?
They
I think
appoint.
the treasurer and the recorder work under the auditor.
They're all different.
Yeah.
They're all,
They're all set up a little different.
yeah. So their
Cass
home rule
County
is,
is just changing stuff too.
yeah. And of course, Cass County, of course, their auditor and treasurer are retiring, I think probably in the next year. So how their home rule charter will take it, I don't know.
Right.
But everything is different in each county. I mean, of course, we talk about that in our associations and.
Right.
Well, not to say that's how we would write the charter, but just to get the ideas of those charters.
And one of the things, go ahead, Adam.
No, I was just gonna say, I think the overarching theme of the home rule isn't necessarily that we're gonna change things on day one.
Right.
It's that by enacting a home rule and writing it the correct way, you allow yourself the flexibility to make changes going forward when those changes may necessarily need to be made. Whether it's, when our treasurer retires. And we decide, well, maybe it would be more efficient to put the treasurer and recorder together or something. Or, you know, for instance, a certain situation like that. Or when you look at funding things down the road, if we're gonna have to do a renovation on the law enforcement center or something, how do you fund something like that if you don't want to just use property tax? You can go ask the people for a 1/4% sales tax or something like that, if that makes more sense. It just gives you flexibility to do certain things. But it doesn't necessarily mean we have to do a huge bundle of changes today with it. You can
Right.
just write it in that the changes can be changed later in votes by the people.
Right. And that was actually, as we were waiting for the members of the committee to show up, one of the discussions that I was having with Rodney was talking about that I'm not necessarily personally interested in instituting any additional taxation on Ramsey County in any form. But I am interested in ensuring that should additional sources of revenue or diverse sources of revenue be good for this community, that at that point, the community has the option to pursue those things. And I think that from a sort of a logical, forward-looking perspective, if Devil's Lake continues to capitalize on its position and opportunity to be a recreational and tourist destination, I think certain things like a lodging tax will continue to become a more attractive means of funding that could alleviate, instead of necessarily increasing the overall burden on the community, could alleviate some of the tax burden that's currently being borne by landowners, or solely by landowners. Are there any other thoughts?
My thought was, what relationship do we have with our senator? Do they get involved in anything that we do, in discussions, or like say, having them involved in what we're doing? Because from what I've read in other ones, the senators, we're kind of like doing some of their job or whatever it is, you know, the articles I've read in the past, as far as what relationship do we have with, say, Senator Alkey or whoever else?
Susie and I had a conversation with Dave Alkey when we started looking into home rule. Oh, when was it, Susie? Quite a while ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we talked to Dave about it at that point, and he wasn't really too involved in it. I mean, he pulled it up and read on it, but I'd have to say no, I don't think he was extremely involved in it at that point. But I think Dave would become involved had he been, asked to. I think our legislatures would become involved if it was something we approached them with.
I guess I'm failing to see what we would need them to be involved
Yeah.
for.
Well, are you asking more like, do the legislators feel
Supported or-
like it's maybe usurping their authority?
Yeah.
Because, the ability to do taxation and stuff is a state issue right now if you don't have a home rule.
Right.
And I would assume that some of them might see it that way. But, I mean, that would be something that we could discuss with our delegation, but I
Right.
don't know. I mean, I guess in my mind, when you look at a home rule, it's decentralizing power and bringing it closer to the people. And I think that's a positive thing.
Right.
Because it allows us to determine where we're gonna go and what we're gonna do as a county versus the state telling us what we have to do.
Right. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, that's sort of what I think I'm interested in, is allowing Ramsey County more flexibility to govern itself.
I don't know what that entails right now.
Well,
But
that's why we're here.
that's why we're here.
Mhm. That's why I think it'd be important to put our meeting together too, with the counties that are already using.
Certainly.
Ramsey.
Well, and that was,
Talk about a summit or something like that, or a get together and
and I think that was the sense that we had last meeting, was that we wanted to spend the first meeting or two discussing what we had done as Ramsey County in the past,
Right,
and then reach out to other.
and it looks like that's what they did too. I don't know, were the minutes after the meeting? Or did they ever get that meeting pulled together?
I think the meeting that you're referring to was the one where the Richland County Auditor was in attendance, and I think I read that, because it was the November 16th meeting, right?
Yeah, I
Yes,
see it.
November
I
16th.
see it here, yeah.
So I think,
Was that 2004?
Yeah,
Yes.
2004.
looks to me like that was the only person that had come to be in attendance,
Oh, the one.
was the Richland County auditor. So they reached
Okay.
out to 3 counties and got
Right.
the auditor of 1 to attend. Which is kind of funny, because that's the furthest county away that they reached out to, so.
Was that the reason that they had one in force and enacted at that time, so that would be why it would?
Yep, Richland County has the oldest home rule charter in the state.
Is
1785.
home rule?
Yes.
It is home rule.
Yeah, there's,
I don't think it was
there's
1785.
13 counties in the state that have home rule enacted currently. Pretty much most
That's
of
what
the
the counties
counties in the larger city have home rule.
Okay.
And then there's some smaller counties too, like Steele County has home rule. Theirs is specifically for a half-cent sales tax that goes to just road funding. It's very limited in scope, I think. But they also have appointed officials, I believe, they have that as a portion of their ability. I mean, there's Walsh County, I mean, there's 13 counties that have it.
Oh, yeah, here.
They would be, one that would be of interest to maybe visit with, because I know they're also looking at trying to acquire a lodging tax.
Williams?
Yeah, because of, the amount of hotels that they have outside of the city limits. I wanna say it's like close to 500 and some hotel rooms, that they're not collecting tax on right now. So that, I know they're, kind of working on some issues there too, so, they would be a good one to visit with.
What county was that, Suzie?
Williams.
Williams, okay.
Yeah, that's Williston, right, Williams?
Williston.
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
I know when we talk in our CBD meeting, she's, the one that's kind of in the same boat that we are with a lot of, lodging outside of our city limits.
Right. Right. So I mean, with respect to all of this, we're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, all of this has been done and discussed and looked at, it has continued to be looked at. I just think that it's worthwhile for us to do the same.
No, but like I said, I like the ability when we can sit here and have this discussion and craft it towards what a county needs or wants or doesn't need or doesn't want. You know, the ability to essentially rule yourself at home, it says in the home rule is a good thing. It's not a bad idea, it's just a matter of, and I, you know, in reading through, I think it was the implementing county home rule, I think Lloyd Onwell wrote this, if I remember right. But going through it, I was just jotting down notes, you know, stuff like the different points you could do, like freedom to budget. You know, we already have freedom to budget somewhat because we can go over, we can max out a property tax levy and then pull money from the general if we have to, but it makes it more difficult. You know, additional powers raise revenue, sales tax, lodging tax, new forms of government, we could go from 5 commissioners to 3. At some point, if the county ever wanted to do that, they could. If they wanted to do it now, we could. You know, different officials, you can change terms of office from 4 years to 2 years or 6. You can do all kinds of different stuff. And the other one I really like, in all honesty, and most people in Dakota I think like it too, maybe they disagree with me, is the ability to refer, or essentially if the county commission makes a decision you don't like, you go collect some signatures and you can change it.
Yep.
You can amend resolutions.
Yeah,
and things like that.
so if we passed, before we passed the liquor sales ordinance, and if the people didn't like that and wanted to change a specific clause in that, they could go out and collect signatures and they could put it as an election. I always like the fact that you can call your elected officials and correct them when they get a little too big.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing, is I think that inasmuch as this would expand the powers of the county to govern itself, that we want to ensure that it still remains very responsive to the will of the people. But I agree with that, and I think that it's a really valuable thing. Another thing I wanted to bring up, because I found it very interesting, near the back of your booklet, there was a study that the 1992 committee put together to look at in-depth county government. They sent a letter of their findings, and I just wanted to read the start of the last paragraph on that first page, which is, "It's very fitting that during the County Government Week that the Home Rule Study Committee unanimously recommends to the Ramsey County Commission that Home Rule can provide the kind of flexibility which will be needed in the years to come to address the role of county government and the changes which are occurring now with population and regionalization trends. The committee further recommends that a home rule commission be established to put forth a proposed home rule charter for the November general election, excuse me. And so I just think it's very interesting that their thoughts back in 1992 are much the same as our thoughts, or at least my thoughts, with respect to home rule in 2007. And I just felt like that, you know, again, this is not something that we're just pulling out of the air. This has been thought about for a long time, and I still believe it would be good for Ramsey County.
Let's see if we can find a copy of the work one.
So further on down the line, well, what do we get involved in? As far as, is it like budgeting things or ordinance things or just whatever comes up and then we report back to the commission? How does that work, Lucas, as far as?
So we have full authority. The commission has asked, at the last commission meeting, the commission asked to be informed regularly on what we're doing, but this is open to the public, so anyone can be informed. So of course we'll inform them too.
Yeah.
We, Jeff, are here to write a charter, and whatever that charter includes or doesn't include is up to us. So, I mean, the scope of our authority over what we're doing is pretty much infinite. You know, we can do whatever we want to do.
So if there are certain contracts and bids like that, you guys refer those to us not for investigations, for looking at, and then you report back to you, or how does that work? Like there's contracts, bids, or things like that?
What are we discussing now?
Basically the layout of what we're here for.
So like, are you asking like if we had to spend money as a committee,
Right.
who we would have to pass that along to?
I think what you're asking, is this a standing committee or does it have, what's the scope? Essentially, the scope is that
Right, that's right on.
we write the, what we'll do is we'll write the home rule, or we'll investigate if home rule's a thing the county wants and or needs. We'll craft the home rule charter, the documentation, that will then be voted on by us, pro or con. If it's pro, it will be forwarded on to the county commission, and the county commission will make the decision as a whole what they'll do with it, and then this committee will be disbanded at that point.
That's correct.
So the only scope of this committee is essentially writing,
Write the charter.
researching, figuring it
Okay.
out, writing the document,
There's a
forwarding it
deadline.
on to the county commission.
Their century code prescribes a year deadline.
And then essentially that document then, if the county commission decides, will go on whatever election it'll go, you know, it'll go to the people for a vote, up or down, 50.1, you know, just a straight majority wins. And if it passes, then that will be essentially our constitution. It'll be our working document for the county, and it'll, all the abilities and everything else prescribed within the document is how the county will function after that going forward then.
So yeah, with respect to actual like governance or authority, this committee does not have any. You know, there's nothing that we're responsible for except for to do the best to our ability to write and draft a charter.
Can't come back at you for anything after.
But we also gotta do it so that we think that the people will accept it.
Of course.
Well, and if they don't, then they don't.
No, but I mean,
To the best of our ability.
to the best of our ability, we've gotta do something that we think that the people will go for.
Certainly.
Yeah, that's something to keep in mind. If you want to spend county money, you can just come take my job, don't worry.
No, I know that when I'm reading other home rule committees, it gets that deep, you know, down the line, you know, as far as getting involved in things like that. But from reading the book and the letters, it seemed like they didn't know what they were doing, they didn't have any authority, and they were just kind of like.
The 2005 one seemed that way, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, and every county's a little different too, because like when Burley Morton, when both of those counties passed their home rule, they essentially passed home rule for one purpose and one purpose only. It was essentially so they could go to the people and ask for sales tax to build a jail. That's the only reason they wanted home rule. And there was even discussion in the committees once the jail is built and the sunset happens on the sales tax, should we put an expiration date in the home rule that it expires? Because they only wanted it for that one purpose and one purpose only, so they talked about a lot about function and taxation and stuff like that, because that's basically what they were there for. But we're not necessarily here for that, I mean, it can be, but we don't have a specific project we're looking at or anything like that. Just don't think we do. Nothing to come up yet. We'll see.
Kinda hoping that it stays that way.
I'm just kind of hoping it stays that way too. We're already budgeted for next year.
Are there any other thoughts with respect to the work of prior home rule charter committees in Ramsey County?
Maybe it's a roadblock or opportunity, I'm not sure which yet. If we do go the more general route with this home rule, are we going to get into any issues with our current agreements for like the law enforcement center or anything like that with other counties?
And then if you look at the draft, yeah, so that's a good question. If you look at the draft of the home rule charter that was not put to the county commission but does exist in 2005, in the very beginning, it says,
It's got a provision that allows for joint powers, correct?
well, it is a provision that says that all current agreements will be honored unless otherwise specified. I know that there's a
Continuance, Article 9, Section 2. Oh shoot, no, that's continuance present officer or something. Where'd it go?
Here it is, okay, I'm sorry, section 6 of Article 9. All ordinances, resolutions, and regulations of the county enforced at this time of this charter, at the time this charter takes effect, and not inconsistent with the provisions thereof, are hereby continued in force until the same shall be duly amended or repealed.
Yeah, also section 4 says all contracts entered into by the county shall continue in full force and effect.
Yeah.
So,
There you
anything
go.
that's
So-
right
so-
now.
Just wanted to make
So,
sure we
yeah.
didn't step on anything that
That's a
we
good
didn't
point
need
too.
to.
I didn't think of
That, and I agree, and if I hadn't read through that and recognized that that was a very intelligent, forward-thinking thing to include.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oops. Like we're out everywhere.
So that's a piece we'll wanna keep.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we've got a lot of things that we do, joint powers and
Yeah.
combined county type stuff. We have a lot less meetings then. I wouldn't do that.
There's a lot more people
Oh,
calling.
we have a lot more people.
Spend a lot more time on the phone than you do lead meetings.
We have to do a social services meeting. No, in all honesty, I think going forward, there's, especially in certain things like social services and stuff, there's going to be more joint powers agreements, more accommodation, more things like that, trying to find efficiencies. So
Yeah.
we're gonna, and I think that's partially why Lucas brought this up and why I supported it, is that we're gonna need flexibility going forward, I think, as a county.
Especially if things remain tight at the state level.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, I mean, counties essentially, if you read, I think it was Ron Bell we were talking about, there's city home rules and there's county home rules. And city home rules are more broad and vast than county home rules generally, because cities are, you choose to live in a city. A county is almost just prescribed on a map and this is kind of what it is. Well, if you look at, we call ourselves the Lake Region for a reason. It's because we're at the hub community for everything around us. And it's gonna become more and more like that, I think, as the state keeps pinching down on dollars and stuff. It's gonna be, more things are gonna come into town, more counties are going to rely on us, and we have, and a home rule doesn't necessarily prescribe that it makes the deals any better necessarily, but we're gonna have more joint powers agreements, more working closely with other counties.
And, you know, and this is a little bit far out there, but I feel like it, you know, just bears mentioning as food for thought. We could even, in our hypothetical charter that we put forth to go to the people, could include that should another county decide that they would want to add themselves to Ramsey County, create a new entity, there could be a specific provision within this charter saying that it could go to a vote of the people to accomplish that at that time. Because my understanding is that with respect to century code, the only way to do that, unless there was something like this, would be if both home rule charter committees are empowered with the intent to combine. So like both counties would have to vote to empower the same home rule charter committee. Does that make sense?
Just so picking up the other county.
Essentially dissolving two counties and making them
And
one.
wait, me, okay.
But like I said, that's kind of far out there. But my point is to Adam's point, as things need to be flexible,
Right,
I mean, this charter could have that much authority. Now, that's not to say that we're superseding the authority of the people, but we're just saying that there is an apparatus in place that if it were to occur that Benson County was not able to conduct itself efficiently, that they could approach the tax base of Ramsey County and ask if they could join,
somewhere down the line.
right? Something like that.
That's a legislation, that's where the senator rolls in, things like
No,
that.
this-
That's-
They have no
I don't think
authority.
you need it,
You know, you
yeah.
have the authority to do it.
Okay, that was my,
Yeah.
But that's not to say that we necessarily would want to do that. I think, speaking as a hypothetical taxpayer in Benson County, I'd probably be in favor of it. Speaking as an actual taxpayer of Ramsey County, I'd say let's think a little bit about this.
exactly.
So, but anyway, so that's neither here nor there. I feel like to try to illustrate just how much power this
Yeah.
committee has to design a real document that has meat.
Well, and in Lloyd's initial letter there, it made a very interesting point, basically saying let's keep this thing general and quite frankly liberal enough so that it does serve as an infrastructure, not necessarily a fully defined building.
Right. I think that, yeah, I think
This
that's
is
well
the-
taken.
this
It's
is
sort
the
of
skeleton.
as a constitution, right? There's a
Yeah.
reason that the United States Constitution has been able to operate for 300 and change years. It's because it was general and open and flexible enough that it allowed for an entire apparatus of government to build up as the nation built. And so I think that that'd be a very intelligent thing to do on our end as well. It'd be very forward-thinking, not prescriptive.
Our amendments that are added to it have to be done at a certain time.
They'd have to be voted on by the people, but
Anytime you need an amendment, yeah, just be voted on by the people with a simple majority.
There's no time frame to it then.
No, this will be a working document forever, until a point in time where the people of the county see there's no need for it anymore, then they can recall it and try to get rid of it.
Okay.
But once, if
and
it's
that happens.
crafted and it's at, yeah.
And that happens by a simple vote of the people as well.
Yeah.
So like a simple majority can repeal it just like they enacted it.
If it's crafted and adopted and enacted, this will be the charter, the baseline document for the county going forward for
And then
perpetuity.
amendments can be added to
Yep,
it
at
as
any point in
needed.
time, as needed. And like, for instance, Cass County, when they decided they needed to build a diversion, they just passed in last year, they passed a 1/2 cent sales tax, and that was enacted into the home rule charter as, like, it's both 2 cents, this is all it takes. But to put in a 1/2 cent sales tax to pay specifically for the diversion, that sits in the home rule charter. And
So what
they've
we-
done a few different times,
So when
actually.
we draft it, and when we put that to the vote of the people, then should we need to amend that at any point for any reason regarding an auditor's position or anything else? That can be done quite easily.
That can be done by a referendum of the people or by the county commission, should our home rule charter empower them to do that.
Right,
You know, so yes, so you're right, like you wouldn't have to recreate a home rule committee to create an amendment.
exactly, so,
No, yeah, and I guess Cass County is the best representative example of that. You know, we're talking about, they have 3 elected offices right now that are very close to retirement. Montplaisir, their auditor is not retiring, but their recorder and their treasurer are both going to be retiring within the next year. So the county commission, under their home rule charter, has the ability to essentially dissolve, do whatever they need to do simply through ordinance. It doesn't have to go to a vote of the people in Cass County. So they are looking at either making them appointed offices or combining, or they've been working on that right now. But you could also put in there that if the county commission wanted to do something like that, the people would have to vote on it as well.
Right. So Cass's is fairly imperial.
Yeah,
in
theirs
its-
is
in its-
very broad comparatively to a limited scope.
do you think it'd be beneficial to do some kind of a, as we get a little further into this, I know it's early, to do a educational thing for the public,
Absolutely.
to say, you know, the pros, the cons, the difference between having, you know, being under home rule, not being under home rule, and those types of things. Just to give them an idea of why it is we would feel this is a good tool for the county to have in place.
Yes, I think that that's very valuable, and above and beyond our requirement to have a public hearing, I think.
Yeah.
You know, so, because the public hearing, you know, we have to read the document to the public, and we have to, there are requirements, but I do agree that a simple informational session, once we feel that this committee has fully come to terms with all of the aspects of home rule and its benefits and its drawbacks, then yeah, I think we should take it to the people and give them the same opportunity to learn that we've had.
Now if you take it to the people, they may come up with
Yeah.
an idea that you haven't thought of.
Right.
Or they're gonna, like Rodney said, they'll give you ideas to craft it towards hopefully what the people are looking for. Maybe they'll say, you put this in and we think it's horrible. Everybody that's there might go, yeah, we don't like that. Well, then you can go back and, you know,
'Cause the year
amend the
goes by
document
fast.
within this committee to
Certainly.
bring it forward,
Certainly.
of course.
In this home rule for Cass County now, that doesn't mean that the county commissioners can do away with treasurer and recorder. They can still hold that, keep that office if they want. I mean, that isn't written in their charter. I mean, it just gives them the privilege to do it, not that they're gonna do it.
Yes, yes, it gives them the option to, doesn't mean they have to, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll be honest, in my thought process in this, I don't know where I fall on, you know, sitting on the county commission, I don't know how much power we wanna give ourselves. To be honest.
Well, that's another thought.
I'm just being honest. But that being said, like I said, I like the flexibility. I think it would be a positive step to give the option for combinations of, you know, putting, you know, so at some point in time, if we see efficiencies that can happen and it just so happens that we have a retirement or something and it makes sense to put an office together or maybe make one appointed, the option would be there and maybe we'd just be, take it to the people, you know, and ask for that change.
And to that point about commission power, you know, and this is speaking a little bit, my own personal view, so I'll step away from being the chair of this committee and say my personal view is this. I believe that in order to ensure that the county commission does not have too much power, one of the effective ways to do that would be to create an administrator position for the county and have that to be an elected position and have the auditor, treasurer, recorder be appointed beneath that elected official. So that way you essentially recreate on a microcosm level the apparatus of government of the United States, which is to say that you have an elected, an executive branch that's headed by an elected official, the president, and you have a legislative side that passes the budget, that allocates those types of things, and they're also elected, and that would be the Congress. And to me, the county commission more closely mirrors a Congress than it does an executive. And I think that that's a lot of the reasons that you have certain inefficiencies, which is to say that it's too easy to disperse authority over decision-making amongst a commission. In other words, if something goes wrong, too often I think that the commission can sort of shrug and say, well, I tried. And whether or not that's true, you know, there's a reason that the presidency, was it Truman said the buck stops here? Was that Eisenhower? Truman. You know, the buck stops here, right? That there's a certain amount of benefit to having a singular executive with which responsibility for certain things will fall. And I think it makes it the government a little bit more responsive to the will of the people, because it doesn't so easily allow for shoulder shrugs amongst elected officials. So that's neither here nor there, that's me talking as myself, you know, and what I like, right, that I think is interesting. I also believe that with a county government that has 70,
16, no.
okay, so that has 70 employees, that it does not appear unreasonable to me to have someone that fills an administrative role. Because right now, I think it's very safe to say that that role is sort of ad hoc placed upon the position of auditor. And so I don't believe that, at least in the purest sense of the term, the roles that Ramsey County places upon its auditor are the roles of an auditor.
Candy? Not gonna touch that one. That's kinda how it's always happened.
It's a lot of work.
So the department heads, in essence, report to you?
No.
Or
No.
all, like HR, I'm thinking like administrative, or how does that work here in our county?
We have a mix of, so she's elected and the people, she reports to the people,
Yeah.
as do our other recorder and treasurer report to the people. The sheriff reports to the people, the state's attorney reports to the people, and then we have, so that's the elected offices, and then everybody else in the building technically works for the county commission, kind of, sort of. So we have the highway department, so Kevin, our HR, tax director, yeah,
And I think it's
yeah,
important
maintenance head.
Yeah.
to mention at this juncture that the Office of State's Attorney and the Office of Sheriff are not touchable by us.
Yeah, Century Code states they have to be elected.
So there, we can't do anything with respect to those positions. Now, that being said, I do also like the idea of allowing the currently elected office holders to continue to seek office until such time as they no longer wish to. So in other words, because I can understand that there could be a certain amount of hesitation amongst those who chose to seek the office as an elected office to give up that freedom from oversight. That being said, and it's been done in other counties, as those office holders retire, that position switches from an elected to an appointed position. I think that that's something that could be very reasonable to pursue should this committee and this community choose to go that way.
Yeah, and in all honesty, in my view, the county's been really lucky that we've had people that have worked in the offices move into the position of running the offices then, so they knew what was going on, they knew how everything needed to run. Yeah, there was a learning curve still, but you were there, you knew what was happening. Whereas counties like Cass and the larger counties are getting concerned because you could have an election and you could have somebody that has no clue how a treasurer is supposed to do their job or an auditor, and they might have nothing, and they can win.
Yeah.
And they can show up and they can just blow the place to shreds.
Right.
Like Montplaisir, he's a CPA, things like that, where they want the ability to appoint someone they know can handle the job. And, we're a big enough city that I think, we've got plenty of people, but we've been lucky that we've had good people that have taken on the job.
And lucky, in addition to that, I, in my role as commissioner, have had several people respond sort of in disbelief that the portfolios that I'm responsible for, that I have no real authority to be punitive or to do some kind of correctional work over some of these departments, because, and thankfully, we've got good department heads that actually show up. But there's nothing as a commissioner that I can do to reprimand or hold accountable any of the elected department heads in this courthouse. And so the only thing that could be hoped for, in the case that that were to happen, so it doesn't happen now, I don't believe, but in the case that it were to happen, the only thing that you could hope for would either be that it gets, if it was so egregious, you could probably call a special referendum election.
You have to petition and ask the governor for removal.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
You
the
gotta
only way you can do
remove
it.
them first before you can have an election.
Yep.
You
You
know,
have,
well,
you have that, they tried that with the sheriff in Mackenzie County and the governor put him back in place and then 9 deputies quit within a week.
You know,
People
but-
have to recall.
Yeah, or the people can recall as well, but the county commission, the only recourse we would have would be asking them. Yeah, the people would have the
Recall
ability
election.
to.
But so like if it was so egregious, there are certain things that could happen. And the egregious ones I'm not even so concerned about because I believe that they would rectify themselves. What I'm concerned about is someone who very apathetically goes about their job, who chooses not to show up every Friday or every other Friday because they want to go fishing. They want to do whatever. And there's no way to hold them accountable. And yeah, it may bother some people in the public, but a lot of the times these positions go unopposed. You know, and they're supposedly elected officials that run unopposed. And then at that point, is it really an election? You know, you can vote for anyone as long as it's Joseph Stalin, right? I mean, so, and again, I'm being a little bit facetious and I'm being a little bit overgeneral. But this could matter at some point. And because it could matter at some point, I think we're doing a disservice to the future of this community if we don't talk as though it will happen, right? NASA builds rockets that are never going to explode, right? They don't build a rocket and say, well, I mean, there's a 5% chance that something will go wrong, that's good enough. You know, if there's a 5% chance that the way that we're structured as a county right now, that something could go egregiously wrong and we had the chance to fix it now, and it's a disservice not to fix it.
So the people, what do they need, if they wanted to get involved in change an ordinance or a referendum or whatever you call it?
15%. It
Was
was
500, right?
what was listed, well,
Well, we can set those limits.
but we can set that, but that's what was in the last one. So yeah, we can set that up however we want. If you need one signature, I wouldn't recommend that because you'll get a lot, but.
Yeah, I mean, you wanna set the bar high enough where it's, you have to have a concerted effort to go do it.
I think I read
But low enough that
somewhere,
it's not so hard to.
yeah, it was like 500 or 10% or something.
15% is what it said in the last.
And statewide, I can't remember what it is, it's a certain percentage of whoever voted in the last general election. Like right now, to do a initiated measure, as long as it's not constitutional in North Dakota, I think it's 13,000.
You mean the presidential election, you know,
Yeah.
that general one?
It's usually the last general, I think is what we usually go by. But yeah, it would be the same thing here, you know, it'd be a certain percentage of how many people voted, you'd how many signatures you have to get.
Right.
And in all honesty, it's usually not that hard.
Is that right, Ken? It's
It's
500? Is that what it says on your website, 500? Thought I saw that somewhere. It don't matter, right now.
It's right here, 2% of the population of the county.
2% of the population of the county.
That's to amend the charter.
Oh,
There was a provision in there to do ordinance type things for 15%, but I don't remember.
Which is incredibly interesting to me. It's
15%.
according to the
Commission.
according to the former home rule charter, you only need 2% to bring the entire charter into question, but it takes 15% to add something to it.
Well, that 15% though doesn't require a general election, is what my understanding was.
That's what I like.
That 15% was enough to overrule the county commission.
No, that's called question. So in other words, yeah, it doesn't
Okay, I just read it.
undo what is done, it just allows for a vote to be forced, I think, if I read it right. If only we had a legalized.
Yeah, our lawyer's in trial right now. You're a legal expert.
So to bring everything back to this, I think we've probably walked into kind of our open discussion territory already. But before we sort of formally take that step, are there any other specific thoughts related to what has been done before that anybody wants to bring to the attention of this committee before we fully leave that portion of the agenda? Something that I want to bring up before we do leave that portion of the agenda is that the home rule charter that was being considered and drafted in 2005, it says here that they had posted to the county website. so that anybody at any time could read the draft proposal. I think that that is something that we should do, if possible, also. I think that would be a very valuable thing. So that whatever the most current draft is, as we move forward and actually start one, that would be available online as well. So I wanted to bring that up as something to consider.
I would probably go one step further than that even, because, I mean, that was state of the art back then, kind of. Whereas nowadays, especially if we want to get this passed, whatever it ends up being, we're gonna have to be out in front of it. We are the ambassadors for it. Judy's resignation letter had something to that effect, basically saying that she couldn't be an ambassador for it. So in our current times, website is a start, social media is another avenue. Like I said, I mean, early on in the stage here, I'm looking for roadblocks to see what we're gonna have to overcome and to how to message that to get ahead of that. So forgive me if I'm coming across negative at times, but that's the goal, at least from my perspective at this time, is to see what hurdles we have to overcome and then devise a plan to basically get over those and see what the end result looks like it's gonna be. And the points that you had brought up earlier about gaining back feedback from our community, man, what a time we live in.
Well, and yeah, and you may have seen, I think you liked my post on Facebook, but after the last Home Rule Charter Commission meeting, I did post on Facebook inviting the public to come to this meeting. You know, and so I think that that's a very worthwhile thing to endeavor to do because it is open to the public and we do appreciate input. And I don't want to be any form of imperial. I just want to have a discussion about what's best for this community and probably equally as important, because it doesn't happen very often, what's best for this community 10 years from now.
And I do like it if we could tape it every time, because we're not always able to be here. If that's
Candy, are
kind of
these
like
being
our
posted
county
anywhere?
commissioner meetings.
Would we need a motion of the county commission to post them to the county commission website, or like the YouTube? Could they just be uploaded to that? Because I think that that would be a reasonable place to put them.
Are you thinking of having your own webpage? Is that what you're thinking? Oh,
I
okay.
don't see any reason to do that.
Okay, I didn't know if you were,
I think we'd have to vote as a committee here to allow that to occur, the recording to occur.
Has it not been recording?
It has been recorded right now?
Okay. And it was the first time because Lisa wasn't able to attend. and
exactly,
wanted
so
to.
I have,
And then I just did it
You just did it
to
again. Well,
just like
that's fine,
reference back because I don't always get to
Yeah.
this.
But I mean, this is open to the public, and as such, I
Right.
believe that it should be made available.
Right.
I agree.
and I mean, when winter work starts, I don't
I guess
have
my
time to sit in
only
here for an hour.
question, my only question isn't that it should be made available, it's whether or not we should make it available on Ramsey County Commission's
Exactly,
YouTube page, in, you know. in
Yeah,
that-
there's nothing wrong with having a link. I mean, you mentioned the website, that's just too much money, you just have a link on there that the,
No, we already have a good
No,
county
we-
website
we-
where we can link to it.
Yeah,
Video or just audio?
we have it where our commission meetings
And I
are.
it could be right with that. I mean, like,
Well,
another
you
click on it.
just-
Well, let's put it on and we'll talk about it at our next commission.
Yeah,
meeting.
'cause I
Make sure
think-
it's
I think-
okay with the commission as a whole, but I don't know why we would have any problem
I don't
disseminating
see
any.
where-
Well, and I
More
think,
information is good, so.
I think that it would be easier if we did make a motion. I'm sure it'll pass, but I think that the commission itself should pass a motion to include
okay.
all of this on the county website. So I wouldn't worry about that, but I agree that it should be available.
See here, I'll make a motion that this committee ask the county commission to put it as a secondary channel on their YouTube site.
To make it available on the
Yes.
YouTube page
I see.
and on the county commission website.
Sure.
Okay, we have a motion to accomplish that. You second there, Jeff? All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying.
Can you say something really quick?
Yeah.
If you did want to commingle your videos together, you could create a separate YouTube channel, that's Home Rule
Which is
Committee.
done.
Oh, it is done, it's already done. Oh, perfect, so then you
Yeah,
could just link to
Ah,
that
you guys are ahead of us here.
on the website,
That's,
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think what I would like to see is just have it its own separate portion of the website, like, you know.
Like a tab for home rule?
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Oh, I
fine.
know Steve fine with doing that on the program.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool.
Keep it separate.
Then we can link, and since it's an ongoing thing, I would say we could have a separate tablet, then also have like an active link on the front page so that people know where to go find the home rule or something.
Something I would like on this page, hypothetically, is a submission portion where people can submit thoughts on it and ideas. So that, you know, even if people can't attend these meetings, if they're watching from afar, that they can submit thoughts.
Is there a way to restrict that
Oh.
geographically?
Yeah.
Because I know you can restrict it all or none, because I know that's the way it currently is with the county commission meetings, but
That's a good.
Well, and I don't mean YouTube comments, I mean like a submission on the county commission website to submit
understood.
what would
Can we
generate.
make sure these people are from Ramsey County?
See, what
Well,
we
yeah, that's
do
gonna be
is,
pretty hard to separate.
Yeah, we guess it would be. It's something to ask Steve.
we have a Ramsey County Facebook page
I know
that
you can filter it there.
Nathan links the recorded meetings onto that page.
But do you understand what I'm saying? Like comments on like, even entire articles that someone would want to have us consider.
Yeah.
You know, to submit them so that we can see them, even if they can't be in this room, where they could tell us what they'd like to see.
That would be a perfect avenue for the Facebook approach, because there you can restrict using their city hall application to say you have to be in this jurisdiction.
Well, you just gotta have a thing on there where they gotta put their name, address on there, and then it would.
Yeah, people would just spoof that too.
I'd say it was me. I'd say bad things about us.
One of the things that I think is really incredible as an aside is the telemarketer spoofs now are so good that they like can give listed numbers.
Yes.
Like one night I was at my mom's house having dinner and her phone rang and on the TV where it showed the caller ID, it said that we were getting a call from Tom and Lori Ruley. And I thought, oh, did we leave the office unlocked or something? And answered the phone and it was a telemarketer, that had somehow spoofed their number
Yeah.
to call.
Like starting to do
Really?
it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
There-
Jason Felder.
I see a lot of Hillsborough on there too, that's like Hillsborough, I'm picking up and it's whatever, it's way out there. you know.
Yeah, they're,
Yeah,
they've gotten really
they
smart.
yeah, they spoof numbers in North Dakota all over the place. I don't even pick up anything unless it goes to voicemail.
Yeah.
If I don't recognize the number, if it's not my, not my
They're really
address, anybody.
tricky.
So, anyway, okay, so I think there was a motion and a second to include all of that. And we can talk to Steve and see if there's some way we can set up a submissions page. Thank you, Lisa. Set up a submissions page also in a way that we can collate that and look at it at our ongoing meetings. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. I think the next thing on the agenda is to set another meeting date, is that right?
Would it be, are we out of order that we should have somebody come in from one of these others that's got home rule in the next meeting or two that can bring us up to date on how theirs working, what they did to make it go?
Rodney, would you like to make that motion, that we reach
I
out to
will make that a
these?
motion.
Do you have any specific home rule counties that you'd like us to reach out to?
Well, no, but I mean, not really, no, but I mean, I just think that it's, we've talked about a lot of things, but we've gotta have somebody that we can get some more ideas out of, and maybe at the same time, maybe we could come up with something that would just propose it to them and see if they think it would, how it would work.
Sure.
I think, expanding on Rodney's point, I think it'd be good to have a cross-section of maybe a county that's had home rule for a while. To
Yes.
see how it's worked for them, and then maybe have a county that just passed home rule somewhat recently, to see, you know, how it went over, how they passed it, however, you know, and things
Roadblocks
like
they
that.
may
Yeah,
have hit.
roadblocks they ran into, so we maybe get a little bit of both.
So we've got something to work with. To me, we're kind of working in the blind right now.
Okay,
I don't know who we can get, but
I was just
We'll leave that
thinking
up to
about
Candy, she knows
sending
people.
just a mass email to start out with.
Somebody, there must be one of these, some of these counties that's got it, that would, we could ask if they would volunteer to give us some insight. so to speak.
absolutely.
oh, I'm sure somebody would.
I think what I'll start out with is sending a mass email to all the auditors, asking for a copy of, like a current copy of their home rule charter. And then to refer me to
Who would talk about it?
who would be the best person to, you know, come and visit with us about it.
That's a good way to start.
And, you know, we'll go from there.
Because I think that would be a logical thing to add to our binders here, would be a copy of at least some of the current rule charters.
I've read a lot of them online, they're all posted online.
Posted more.
Okay, so Rodney made a motion that this committee reach out to other home rule counties in North Dakota and request that we open a dialogue with them about how their charter works, if it's working.
Seconded.
I think did Susie
Susie
say
seconded.
Susie
Susie
seconded.
Oh, never mind.
Look, you're fine.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carried. Are there any other items that need to come before this committee today?
When are we gonna be next?
Oh, yeah, that was what we were talking. Yeah, when are we going to do it?
Sorry to have interrupted.
No.
No, that's okay.
See, it's the 8th today?
Yep.
2 weeks from now is Thanksgiving week, so that's probably not the best.
December 10th or something. Wednesday, you wanna do it?
Let's see here. Yeah, Wednesday afternoon seems to work the best for everyone, correct?
We could keep it, or we could go to the week after, move the 29th.
Yeah, we could do the 29th or maybe like the 6th of December would be. 29th would be 3 weeks from now. How much time do you need to
Not the
probably?
end of the month.
Okay, so 6th of December
Please
work
no.
better?
Well, and don't do
Please
the
no.
29th because it's so close to New Year's that people are gonna be gone for that.
That's November.
No,
This is in-
November.
this is
Or
in
November,
November.
okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah,
Not the end of
so,
the month.
well, how long are you going to need to probably discern if we can get somebody here?
Well,
And what are our goals for
It'll
next
take me-
meeting, I guess?
Couple weeks.
2 minutes to send an email, but
Who knows how long it'll take to get something back, huh?
response time back
May
might
vary.
be a little, yeah.
I don't mind December 6th, that would give, personally, me a little bit of time to dive into some of the other
Yes.
home rules, counties.
We've got a fair
See
amount of
what they-
homework for us right
Yeah.
now, so.
I'd December 6th works best for me. I can't do it on the 29th.
Okay.
1 or 2 o'clock work better, or?
The 2 o'clock was fine for me.
Yeah, it'll be winter, so.
Yep.
Hopefully it'll be done by then.
And maybe we can allocate like a 2-hour block in the event that, we do have somebody that would like to visit with us.
That work, Andy?
See what I can do.
That's all we can ask. I'll make the motion that we meet December 6th at 2 p.m.
We have a motion and a second.
Seconded. Or am I late again?
And so, commissioners, is there a way that if we wanted to call in and listen to the meeting, because I'll be in Atlanta at that time, can I call in and just listen to it?
I've got our trusty tin box here.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do more than listen, you can even have everyone if you want.
That's something we need to put on the county commission, and we can get that thing replaced.
Yeah.
Bad. Bad.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of holding our next meeting on December 6th, it's a Wednesday at 2 p.m., signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carried. Fire, hopefully not a literal fire.
Did you say it was a fire? Oh,
Okay, is there anything that we feel, apart from the fact that if we reach out and get individuals from home rule counties that would like to speak with us and have a dialogue with us about how theirs is working. Apart from that, what else would we like to see on the agenda for the next meeting? Thank you, Susie.
Wait, sorry.
No, I don't know about agenda-wise, but, you know, kind of piggybacking off of the thought process, we need something that's going to be under the assumption that it, you know, it's going to pass the public's muster so you can get it passed. And I've mentioned this at the county commission level before, I think we're gonna need something that the county commission as a whole is going to buy into too, because they're gonna have to be the front for this too, to try to get it passed. So I think we should put it on the agenda for the commission meeting, and at least give everyone a heads up that we should at least come up with a list of priorities or ideas, or just for guidance. So at least we have a place to start. Because, you know, we can talk and talk and talk and talk in circles here with ideas.
We get nothing done.
Yeah,
I think what you said awful right there, Nathan, that you've gotta give us some tools to work with.
just some bullet points of kind of what we're, you know, an idea of priorities we're looking
All I would talk about tools is ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean this is a committee has to accept those ideas, but just, you know, and I don't know, maybe we won't have any good ideas, I don't know, but I think it's worth a discussion at our next meeting, so we have something in place by the 6th of December. Because I think, you know, regardless of if we have people come in and we learn from them and we discern where we're gonna go with it, but we still have to, at some point in time, just have to dive into the crafting document and figure out, you know, a lot of it is to a point boilerplate, but what do we want here, what do we want there, what do we want there? Well, we're gonna have to have an idea of what's gonna get through the commission as a whole, if anything.
Well, and I think, you know, I'm heartened by the fact that when we created this committee, we more or less seemed unanimous in voicing the opinion that we wanted to bring something to the vote of the people. And that being said, I suppose if we really go off the rails as a committee and present something ridiculous, I can imagine the commission would change.
Well, and that's my point, is, you know, what you think is palatable to the commission as a whole is probably gonna be different than what I think, or different than what any of the other commissioners think, you know?
Sure.
You know, you might think, well, we need to change the elected officials, or we need to put in this or that or the other thing. Well, as a whole, we might not think that's something we're looking for, I don't know, but it wouldn't hurt to have everyone at the commission level at least think about it. And come up with some ideas so we can at least get some guidance and bring it back here so that we can start just trying to get our head around where we want to start at.
Trying to get something so that we got something to start to put together.
And maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to send out a copy of, you know, because Ed had asked at the meeting yesterday about keeping informed and things like that. You know, send out an idea of what the draft home rule was previously, so they can look, we can all look, you know, at least have an idea of what we're looking at, so what's included, what can't be included, that kind of thing. You know, like I said, it's just because the commission as a whole wants something a certain way doesn't necessarily mean we have to adopt that a certain way, but at least get you a place to start.
You could also give the commission, you know, a copy of the minutes of,
Yeah.
you know, what's happening.
Yeah, we
at the
already,
meetings.
yeah, that, we talked about that yesterday,
Okay.
that we're gonna send out the minutes so they know kind of what we're discussing, and tell them about the YouTube so that they can watch and see what the
Sure.
discussion is.
Well, I think our minutes should go to the county commissioners so that you know what we're doing too.
Okay, is there anything else that we need to discuss? Visitors and delegations. Katie?
I got nothing.
Seeing no visitors and delegations, do we have a motion to adjourn until December 6th?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. We stand adjourned.